You're in line at the coffee shop, and the person ahead of you orders some elaborate drink with 4 modifications, costs them $7.50. You shake your head a little, thinking, that's ridiculous, and order your regular $5 latte. $5, no big deal. You've got it under control. Except, here's what your brain isn't calculating. That $5, 5 days a week, for 10 years, is $13,000. Not $2,600, $13,000. Because you're not accounting for what that money could have done if you'd invested it instead of drinking it. My name is Zach, and I help people see the long-term cost of short-term spending decisions that feel completely harmless in the moment. Because the expenses that actually drain your wealth aren't the obvious ones. It's not the vacation you save up for, or the big purchase you plan. It's the tiny, recurring, barely noticeable expenses that compound into absolutely massive amounts over time. And most people have 7 or 8 of these running simultaneously without even realizing what it's costing them. Let's start with the daily coffee, since we're already there. $5, 5 days a week. That's $100 a month, $1,200 a year. Over 10 years, you've spent $12,000 on coffee. But remember what we talked about. Money has time value. If you'd invested that $100 monthly at an 8% return, you'd have about $18,300 after 10 years. The coffee didn't cost you $12,000. It cost you $18,300 in real wealth you no longer have. And if you're 25 when you start this habit and you keep it until 65, that same daily coffee costs you over $300,000 in retirement wealth. I'm not saying don't ever buy coffee. I'm saying understand what you're actually trading for it. Second expense that looks tiny, eating lunch out every workday. Let's say you spend $12 on average. Doesn't feel crazy. Everyone around you does it. It's just lunch. That's $60 a week, $3,120 a year. Over 10 years, invested at 8%, that's about $57,000. $57,000 for lunch. Now compare that to bringing lunch from home for an average of $4 per day. You're saving $8 daily, $40 weekly. That difference alone, invested over 10 years, is $38,000. Same 10 years, same workdays. One person has $38,000 more than the other, purely based on the lunch decision. And here's what makes this so invisible. Each individual lunch doesn't feel significant. It's $12. You're hungry. You're busy. You're at work. It feels like a necessity, but it's not. It's a choice you're making 250 times a year, and the cumulative cost of that choice is staggering when you actually run the numbers. Third one that destroys wealth silently. Subscription services you barely use. You've got Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, and maybe Spotify and a couple of app subscriptions. Let's say it's $85 a month total. You definitely use Netflix. You occasionally use Spotify. The other stuff? Maybe once a month combined. That's $1,020 annually. Over 10 years, invested instead of spent, that's about $18,600. And the brutal part? You probably forgot half of those subscriptions even exist until I mentioned them. Here's a simple exercise. Pull up your bank statement and credit card bills right now. Look at recurring charges. How many subscriptions are you paying for that you haven't used in the last month? For most people, it's at least 3 or 4. Cancel them. Not forever, just for now. If you desperately miss one, you can always resubscribe. But chances are, you won't even notice they're gone. And that $30 or $40 or $50 a month suddenly working for you instead of against you makes an enormous difference over time. Fourth expense, the premium car you didn't need. This one's bigger but still belongs on this list because people drastically underestimate the real cost. Let's say you buy a $35,000 car with a $400 monthly payment over 6 years instead of a $20,000 car with a $250 payment. That's $150 extra per month. But here's where it compounds. Insurance is higher, registration is higher, maintenance costs more, and you're financing more money at interest. The all-in difference is probably closer to $200 monthly. Over those 6 years, you've paid an extra $14,400 for the nicer car. But it doesn't stop there. Once the cheaper car is paid off, the person who bought it has $250 a month freed up. If they invest that for the next 4 years while you're still making payments, they've built $15,000 while you've built nothing. Then, when your car is finally paid off, they've had a 4-year head start investing. Over 10 years total, the difference between these two choices is around $45,000 in net worth. Same basic transportation, $45,000 difference. Fifth expense that quietly kills wealth. Paying for convenience constantly. DoorDash, Uber Eats, Instacart, grocery delivery, task services. You order dinner delivery twice a week because you're tired and don't want to cook. Between the marked up menu prices, delivery fees, service fees, and tips, that $30 meal costs you $45. If you'd picked it up yourself, it's $32. That's $13 per order, $26 weekly, $1,352 yearly. Over 10 years invested, that's about $24,700. I'm not saying never use these services. Sometimes they're legitimately worth it. But when it becomes your default because you can't be bothered to plan ahead or make the 15-minute round trip yourself, you're paying an absolutely massive premium for minor convenience. The wealthy person asks, is this convenience worth $25,000 over 10 years? The broke person just clicks order without thinking about it. Sixth one, the ATM fees and bank fees nobody thinks about. You use an out-of-network ATM and get hit with a $3.50 fee from the ATM plus a $2.50 fee from your bank. $6 to access your own money. You do this twice a month because you're not organized enough to plan ahead. That's $144 a year in pure waste. Add in overdraft fees from poor tracking, let's say you get hit twice a year at $35 each, and maybe a monthly maintenance fee of $12 because you don't meet the minimum balance, you're now at $432 annually in completely avoidable fees. Over 10 years, that's $6,600. Invested, it's about $9,600. Almost $10,000 lost to fees that serve no purpose except punishing you for disorganization. That's not even spending. It's just money disappearing into the void because you couldn't be bothered to use your own bank's ATM or keep track of your balance. And most people have no idea how much they're losing this way because the individual fees are small enough to ignore. Seventh expense, the gym membership you don't use. You pay $60 a month for a gym membership. You went 12 times this year. That's $720 annually, $60 per visit. Over 10 years, that unused membership costs $11,000 in invested value. Either actually use it, go 3 times a week and get real value, or cancel it and do bodyweight workouts at home or run outside for free. But paying for something you're not using just because canceling feels like admitting defeat is burning wealth for absolutely no reason. Here's the pattern that ties all 7 together. None of these expenses feel important in the moment. $5, $12, $60 a month. Your brain dismisses them as trivial because the individual transactions are small. But your brain is terrible at compound math. It can't intuitively grasp what these small amounts become when you multiply them across months, years, decades, and add investment returns. Let's add them up. The coffee, the lunches, the subscriptions, the car difference, the delivery convenience, the bank fees, the unused gym. That's about $475 monthly in expenses that provide minimal value. Over 10 years, just pocketing that money gets you $57,000. Investing it at 8% gets you about $86,000. In 20 years, over $275,000. These aren't luxuries you're carefully choosing and deeply enjoying. These are habits you fell into and never questioned. And here's the most important thing. I'm not telling you to cut all of this. If you genuinely love that daily coffee and it makes your morning better, keep it. If eating lunch out is important social time with coworkers, keep it. But most people aren't making conscious choices. They're just on autopilot, spending money on things they barely value and wondering why they can't get ahead. So here's what you do. Pick 3 of these 7. Not all 7, just 3. That's manageable. That's sustainable. Redirect that money into automatic investments before you can spend it on something else. Watch what happens over 6 months. Watch the balance grow. Watch yourself not missing those expenses nearly as much as you thought you would. Then pick another 1 or 2, because the person who eliminates $250 monthly in low-value expenses and invests it from age 30 to 65 ends up with about $640,000 more at retirement than the person who keeps spending it. Same income, same life, mostly. $640,000 difference. That's not about depriving yourself. That's about actually looking at where your money goes and deciding if those tiny daily choices are worth more than the massive long-term outcomes you're giving up. Most of the time, they're not. You just never did the math before.